this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this Minnie Mouse cake. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. If you want to skip the intro and get right into the video, there are chapters linked below. So we are decorating a Minnie Mouse cake this week, and I already, like always, have my cakes baked, filled, and iced, and they are sitting in the refrigerator waiting to be decorated. I have videos showing you how I bake, fill, ice, make icing, how I make fondant, how I refrigerate cakes. All of that will be listed in the description below. And also any tools that I use and any other videos that I reference will also be listed down there. And before we get started, I just need to thank you guys for your support. I started a Buy Me a Coffee page not too long ago, and I am overwhelmed with the abundance of support that I'm getting from you guys. I can't thank you guys enough. I am so grateful for you. And right now, I'm trying to pivot my business from making cakes all the time to being able to teach you, and I want to be able to make more content, and having your support really makes this a lot easier for me. So thank you so much. There is a link in the description, and I usually pin it in the comments to my Buy Me a Coffee page. If you wanted to support me, I would really appreciate it. So let's get started. I have gum tex powder or Tylose powder mixed into all of my fondant. It helps the fondant set a little harder and makes it so much easier to work with. And I just store it in this little container right here. So I have some pink fondant, but I need a little bit more. This light pink is Wilton Pink, and the hot pink is Sugar Flare, Claret, and Wilton Rose. All those colors will be linked in the description. I have some white fondant here, and I'm just kneading it, and I need to add a little bit more Tylose powder to it because it's a little too soft and stretchy. So what I like to do is just sprinkle a little bit on. That was probably about half a teaspoon, and I'm just going to knead that in there and rip it in half, and I'm going to put half of it with the light pink and get a little bit of light pink on the toothpick and knead that together. And I'm going to do the same thing for the hot pink. Now that pink fondant that I had already had some Tylose powder mixed into it, but with adding this other white fondant, I needed to add a little bit more Tylose. So you don't want to add too much, just enough to make it easy to work with. Now I have some black fondant here, and I'm going to roll out the border. So I want to roll it really thin, and then I'm going to flatten it with my hands and sprinkle down a little bit of cornstarch, and I'm going to roll this out really long. And I'm going to do that for all four colors. So I have black, white, light pink, and hot pink are the colors of this cake. Now I have this ribbon cutter. I will link this below. I love this thing. I'm just getting it to whatever width that I want it to be and cutting little strips out of all four colors. And using my rulers to straighten them. Now I get my cake out of the fridge, and I want to clean that icing off of the cake board with a wet paper towel. I have some piping gel, and I'm getting some piping gel around the bottom of the cake. I don't want to go up too high because I don't want piping gel sticking out the top. Starting in the very back, starting with the black at the bottom and wrapping it around where it meets in the back. I'm just going to cut, and where the seam is, push it together. Then I'm taking this little palette knife and I'm pressing it down so it's meeting the cake board. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the other three colors. Now I want to take my palette knife and just press that down and make sure that line is even and dust off that excess cornstarch. Now I want to stack the cake. I'm getting eye level. I'm using my ruler to measure how tall the straw should be and measuring my straws. All the tools that I use will be linked in the description. Cut off that marker and stick the straws into the cake. Make sure it's level. Get down some buttercream. Make sure I wash my hands. My hands are clean whenever I handle these cakes, and stack the next one on top. I have a stacking tutorial where I go into complete detail on how I stack cakes, and that will be linked in the description. Now let's get some piping gel around that border. And you didn't see me do this, but I rolled out another long strip of black fondant, used my ribbon cutter to cut it, and then I'm wrapping it around there. So I made that strip a little thicker than I did on the bottom tier. So now I have this thin white fondant, and I'm sorry that I'm out of frame a little bit, but I'm just using a piping tip and cutting some small circles, get a little bit of water behind it, and I'm just gonna stick it in this like little 5 pattern the whole way around the cake. So when you use water to stick something to cakes, you have a little bit of time where you can adjust, but don't wait too long to adjust them all into the right place. And that looks good. Let's set that back in the fridge. Now, I printed out everything that I'm going to put on the cake, the size that I want it to be. Those will all be linked in the description. And again, all of my fondant has this gum tex powder in it. It's going to make it so much easier to work with. So I rolled out thin tan fondant, and here's the tools that I'm using. I have a piece of non-skid pad underneath my cutting board so it doesn't slide around, an X-Acto knife, a wet paper towel that I can keep wiping the blade on, a Dresden tool, and a little bit of water. Put Minnie down on top of the tan fondant, and look, you have to look past the picture and see where does her face go. So pretend the gloves weren't there and finish where the face goes, right? I hope that makes sense, but you have to look past the picture to figure this out sometimes. So I trace the outside, and then I'm going to go ahead and trace the inner details as well, making sure you get the eyes and don't forget the eyelashes. Peel that away and you can see the lines transferred. So I'm just deepening the lines with my Dresden tool, and then I want to cut out the mouth. And anytime I cut anything out of fondant, you're not going to see me do it every time, but I'm going to take my tools and take my fingers and smooth it, because fondant gets a little jagged when you cut anything out of it. So you just need to take your time and smooth your cuts. And I'm going to do the same thing for the eyes. I'm just going to cut out the little eyeballs and then we're going to fill that in with white fondant. So now I have some white fondant and I'm going to trace the eyeballs on here and cut them out. So this is my method. I trace the stuff onto the fondant, I cut it out, I smooth my cuts, and I piece it together. Super simple, and I say that because I do it all the time, but it really gets easier with practice. And I'm doing the same thing for the tongue, trace it on the fondant, cut it out, smooth my cuts, and the same thing for the nose and the eye. The pupils, that's what they're called. Sometimes words are hard, please forgive me. And cutting out the nose as well. So I'm going to set all those pieces aside, and now I just want to cut Minnie's face out and smooth those cuts. And I'm just going to continue doing the same process for all these pieces. So I have some white fondant and I am tracing the gloves, and then I take my Dresden tool and deepen those lines and then cut the gloves out. And now with the dress, it's the same thing. Like, you have to look past those gloves and try to figure out where the dress is behind the gloves and the arms. And it's going to look a little weird. But as I cut this out, I'm going to realign it back on top. And do you see how the dress fits? So it makes sense. It's just a little weird as you go through the process. And let's continue to do the same thing for the hot pink pieces as well. And do you see how I keep taking my Dresden tool to deepen the lines? Because when you trace it through the paper, it doesn't always transfer very deep. So sometimes you just want to make sure that you go over those lines to deepen that detail. Now I have some black fondant here, and this is going to be even more weird than the dress. So you have to look past everything and just try to figure out, where's the black part? And you see where the shoes are? I'm tracing exactly along the black line. And then when it gets to go under the dress, I am like tracing inside of the dress. See how weird that looks? But it makes sense, trust me, as we put it together. And then I am tracing the arms separately. And don't forget the tail. And let's cut all these pieces out as well. All All right, now I have another piece of black fondant and I'm sticking this weird black piece of fondant on top. Lift the fondant up and get a little bit of water underneath and then press it back down. And let's piece this together. So I'm going to get her face. I'm going to hold the picture close for reference because you need it to look like the picture. If you put the face off to the side or if it's not in the right position, it's going to look weird. So I'm looking like how much of her face is sticking out on the left, how much is sticking out on the right, like where does it go? This is very important when you put this together. And same thing for the other pieces. So I'm starting with the dress. Now I have a black edible marker and I am just using the thin end and I'm just drawing on the eyelashes, and I want to do that first because this bow covers the eyelashes, so you need to have them on first. And I did get water behind all these pieces before I stuck them down. And I have a little bit of black petal dust, tap it into the lid, remove the excess on a piece of paper, and then I just want to deepen the lines. So your pieces are going to look so much better if you take the time to dust them. It's kind of like putting makeup on, right? It just enhances it and just makes everything look so much better. So I'm looking at the picture. I'm trying to see where the lines are. For the face, I am using brown petal dust, and you want a really, really tiny brush. I could find these and link them below, but you need to make sure that you're ordering the correct size because it comes in a bunch of sizes. So you want to get like a size 0 or 1. And now I'm putting the gloves down and just moving them to see, like, are they in the right position before I get the water underneath. It's just easier sometimes to just make sure they're in the right position first. And then let's get her arms on there as well. And now I want to put the shoes on as well. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at the picture and I'm just making sure that I'm putting all the pieces together so it looks like the picture. Getting a little more petal dust and deepening the detail in the rest of the pieces. And that looks good. Let's put the tail on. And now we need some polka dots for her dress and her bow. So I just have this piping tip. I think it's probably like a number 10 piping tip. And I just cut a bunch of little round circles. Circles are all round. Little circles out of the fondant, and I'm sticking them on there. Now I want to cut an even black border around the entire piece. So I'm getting really close and I'm just making sure that this border is even the whole way around. Remove the excess fondant and let's smooth our cuts. And I'm going to realign this back on top of the paper. I don't want her to dry, so I'm going to store her in a Ziploc bag for a couple hours. Now I want to make the number, so I have this strip cutter. I will link it below, and I rolled out all the colors really thin, and you can see I am cutting the pieces out. I'm really pressing them down on there to make sure I have clean cuts, and then I can smack it on the board and it'll come out. If your fondant sticks, you can always take like a needle tool or something to peel the pieces out of there as well. So I'm doing that for all the colors. Then I have a thin piece of white fondant. Make sure the number 3 fits on top, and I'm going to get the entire thing wet, and I want to put stripes down. So I'm starting with the pink. I'm doing the color combination that I did on the bottom tier with those stripes. So pink, white, dark pink, black, pink, white, dark pink, black, the whole way down. Now I want to trace the number 3 on here. You need to make sure that it's straight unless you want your lines to be diagonal, and I'm using a needle tool to poke around the entire perimeter of the number 3. I don't use a Dresden tool for this because you can start to drag the stripes and you can distort them. So I am using the tip of my X-Acto knife right now, and I'm making a shallow cut. I'm kind of sawing up and down. You see how I'm lifting it and then pressing it back down? I don't want to drag because I'm going to distort the lines. They're going to be out of shape. So I get the shallow cut first, and then I use that line as a guide and cut the entire thing out and smooth my cuts. And let's get a little bit of water on the back, flip it over and put it on top of a piece of white fondant. This white fondant is rolled out about a 1/2 inch thick. And anytime I have thicker fondant, I'm going to cut a shallow cut like I did earlier. Now, These little pieces in here are so annoying. Do you see how I have to work in small sections and really be careful with my knife so I don't mess up the fondant? So I'm just trying to get all that fondant out of there. And once you do, I'm going to take my tools, flip it over, smooth it out, and trying to make it look nice and pretty. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the rest of the number. I'm going to do a shallow cut and then stick my knife all the way down to the board, use that line as a guide, and cut the rest of the fondant away from that number 3. And you can see it's like jagged. The fondant just doesn't look really nice. So you have to take your time and smooth it out. So I flip it over, use my fingers, use my tools to smooth out any jagged edges. I'm pushing the pieces that are sticking out back onto itself. So I'm just smoothing everything out. It makes it look so pretty. So this skewer, I can't stick it in the center. You'll be able to see it's got to go over to the right, and I screw it in. Don't jab it in. Put it right in the middle, screw it in, flip it over, make sure it's not sticking out the front or the back. And there is the number topper. Let's set this aside. Now we're making the name. We're going to do the same trace, cut, and smooth method that we've been doing this whole time. So I don't remember the name of this font, but I will link it below. And I'm just tracing it on there. And then make sure you always want to cut the center pieces first before you cut the rest of it out of fondant. It just makes it so much easier to work with. And once you have the center pieces cut out, then cut the rest of the letters out. I'm going to smooth my cuts, and then I'm going to realign it back on top of that paper. Sorry, it's a little bit out of frame. And now I want a black background on these, so I'm getting a little bit of water behind all of the letters, putting it on black fondant, and then like I did earlier, I'm cutting an even black border around all of the letters. And that looks good. Let's set that aside. Now I'm making some curlies. Do a straight line and then squiggly line on either side. And are you guys sick of my curlies? I really have an addiction. I can't stop. There's something wrong with me. So then I take the little pieces, wrap it around a Dresden tool, and set it aside. It has Tylose powder mixed into it, so these are going to hold their shape, and let's set those aside. Now I'm making the little ears that go on top, so I rolled out that black fondant about a 1/2 inch thick, and I'm doing the same thing, just tracing it on there, doing a shallow cut since this is thicker fondant, and then once I have that line, stick the blade all the way down to the board, cut it out, and then take my time to smooth my cuts and make it look all pretty. I have this bow mold here. I love this mold. Just pressing some fondant in there, and then I'm just going to cut the excess away. And get a little bit of water on the back and stick that on, and look how that's such a pretty bow. I do love that mold. Now let's get this cake out of the fridge, and I want to start to decorate it. So flip her over, and I'm going to get a little bit of piping gel on the back. And I'm centering her to the front of the cake, and this is why I put her in a bag, so she's still pliable, so she can conform to the shape of the cake. Now I'm measuring the name, trying to find where the middle letter is. The I is the middle. And I'm going to start by putting these letters on the cake. So I'm getting a little bit of piping gel behind it, start in the middle, and then I'm finishing the rest of the name over to the right, and then I'm starting in the middle and going to the left, and the name is going to be center on the cake. Beautiful. All right, now I'm making the big bow, and I make bows weird. It's just a weird way I do it. So I cut pieces, I put one on top of the other. I start low at one end, and then I curve down, and then I go back up on the other side, peel the pieces away. I have 2 pieces of the same size, get a little bit of water behind it, and then I'm going to fold it up and then down on the sides. I have a video where I go into complete detail on how I make these crazy big bows, and I'm going to link that in the description because it's a little difficult for me to explain it in this like 1 minute that we're going over it right now. So these are the tails of the bow, and again, I'm folding it down and then up, get a little bit of water in the middle so it sticks. And then I want these little pieces to stick to those pieces of the bow. And now I have a little strip here, and I'm folding in the edges just to make it look a little nicer, get a little bit of water behind it to stick it down, and then get water on the whole thing. And I'm going to stick half of the bow. I'll get a little bit of water in between too. Half of the bow is on half the strip, half the bow is on the other half of the strip. And then I'm going to wrap that strip around the middle, tuck it behind the back, and press down. And I want to roll up little paper towels and stick them in the bow so they start to hold their shape. And again, that's all covered in my video showing you how I make this bow. Now, putting this on the cake can get a little tricky. So I'm going to go with some icing and also some piping gel. Which way do I want to put it? I want it to be on an angle here. So as you're holding it, it's going to want to fall off the cake. So you got to make sure you hold it on here. And this icing on the cake is solid. The cake is out of the fridge. I'm not going to mess this up as I do it. And I'm just getting some icing and piping gel behind these pieces as I stick them into place and get them where I want them to be. Stick those paper towels back in there. And now I'm putting a toothpick in the bottom of the 3. That way it's not going to twist when it's in the top of the cake. I got a little bit of icing underneath it, stick it down into the cake, taking my brush and just removing the excess icing that was sticking out. I'm getting two toothpicks in the bottom of Minnie, get a little bit of piping gel under her and stick that down as well. And now I'm getting some piping gel underneath all these curlies. So I'm putting curlies on the very top, on the middle, and on the cake board, just to make it look a little festive. And I put the rest in my little curly container. I know I have a problem. And there is the cake. How cute. So there you go. How cute is this cake? I just love the design and I love the colors. And that hot pink was one of those shades of pink that was so difficult for me to get. And I can't remember who told me the color combination a while ago, but that Sugar Flare Claret and the Wilton Rose makes that beautiful hot pink color that is so popular. And those icing colorings are going to be listed in the description. This cake is 6-inch and 8-inch tiers, and it feeds about 30 to 35 people. So I think that's it. What new techniques did you learn in this video? I would love to know. Leave them in the comments below. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you were enjoying my tutorials, like I said in the beginning, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. My link is pinned in the comments below. And please keep in touch on socials, and you can check out my website. Everything is listed in the description. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next, and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.